Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 92. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, commented, who has continued to listen to and support the show. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. I also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment has been providing uncompromising quality for over 40 years. Samson products are long lasting and made of the highest quality equipment on the market. Each project is built from the ground up with the ability to customize every need. The team at Samson focuses on developing the highest quality relationships with their customers, in addition to providing them unparalleled quality in every piece of equipment bearing the Samson name. Learn more about Samson's professional weight room solutions and the Samson standard at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Chris Slater. Chris is a teacher at Baldwin County Board of Education in Alabama, as well as a wrestling coach. He has both been teaching and coaching for over 13 years. He took a break from teaching in the high school setting to be a gym owner, personal trainer, and strength coach at Alabama Strength, as well as independent professional trainer at Results Gym in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and at Fairhope Fitness in Fairhope, Alabama. In addition to his coaching and teaching, Slater is the Alabama State Chair for Strongman Corporation and the current NSCA Strongman Special Interest Group Chair. Slater is a former collegiate wrestler competing for 4 seasons at Eastern Michigan University. Since his time competing on the mat, he has been heavily involved in strength training and is both a national level middleweight strongman competitor with Strongman Corporation and a powerlifter in the USAPL. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Chris Slater. What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm excited. I am joined by the new NSCA Strongman SIG president. So I've got Chris Slater on the show, strength coach, teacher, wrestling coach, strongman powerlifter, former collegiate wrestler, just a little bit of everything, man. So I'm excited to have you on today.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I know we've been trying to do this for about 6 months, I think. So I'm glad we got it to work out.
Hey, it'll be worth the wait. So without further ado, then kind of can you go through a little bit of how you got into the strength game, how you got started lifting, leading into your career collegiately wrestling, powerlifting, and now fully invested in strongman?
Yeah, no, I started lifting, of course, in high school because I played football in high school, and that was just what you did in the summers, and you just went in there and lifted. But they didn't have a strength coach. It was just a head football coach, and they found this little program it was like a 3x10 kind of a thing, and you would just hit. Like he was always big on machines, not free weights. It was all machines. So you just got to hit 3x10, and you just kind of went through the room, and that's kind of what you did. And so I started just kind of doing that, just kind of lifting on my own. Again, not any real direction, but I noticed it helped a lot when I wrestled. And then I've wrestled since I was in 5th grade. Over the summers and things like that. So I was always active in that. And then my senior year in high school, I decided I wasn't going to play football just for coach reasons and things like that. And the cross country coach he's like, hey, you should run cross, because he knew I was going to wrestle. He goes, hey, it'd be perfect getting condition. And I was like, all right, so I'll run cross my senior year, and then ended up stepping off a curb wrong and tore all the ligaments in my ankle. So I was like, this is great. but I was able to rehab and actually ran the last race of the season, and so I was ready to go for wrestling. But at that time, I'd signed to wrestle at Eastern Michigan University at the time when they still had a program. They don't anymore. That's a little bitter about that, but that's a different topic for a different day. And then that's really when I got it was Coach Dave Lawson was our strength coach. I believe he's still at Tennessee. I'm not 100% on that, but I think last I knew he was still at Tennessee. And I could be wrong, but he was just one that like you hated him. Like you hated going in there lifting, but he taught you how to push. He taught you to get out of that comfort zone. And weirdly enough, that was just one of those things that like I liked being pushed. I liked having somebody just kind of yell at you every once in a while and just kind of get into it. So that's kind of really where I learned how to lift, and I kind of got a love for the weight room after that. And then by the time I got done wrestling, and there's my son. So, by the time I got done wrestling, and I needed something to do, some kind of an outlet after that. And so when I started doing my student teaching and all that, I actually was going to start doing a bodybuilding show. Just for something to do. I enjoyed the gym, things like that. And then I got about 4 weeks out from an actual show, and then I got sick, and then it screwed all my prep up and all that. I was like, well, shoot, I'm not doing this. And then wrestling for so many years, you get tired of kind of watching your weight and that kind of stuff. And so there was a flyer at the gym for a local strongman comp. And that was back when it was NAS, North American Strongman. Old school, like it was heavyweight and it was lightweight. So it was 231 and under or over. That was it. There was no other weight classes. Every once in a while you could find like a 200 class, but that was it. And I got my only goal, my first comp is like, you know what? I don't want to finish last. And there was another guy that did it at the gym, and he was one of those guys that like to talk a lot of stuff. And so I was like, I don't want to lose to this guy. And so I did. I beat him. So I finished 9th. There was 10 of us. And so I kind of got hooked in strongman after that. So that's kind of a quick little way, kind of how I got into strongman and strength training and all that.
That's awesome. That's great too. First advice for anybody looking to do a competition: not finish last, not zero any events, or just come out pretty healthy. Those are all great things to do. And man, those days of old school NAS, I was a few years behind you when it came to that. I think I started in I think my first competition was 2011.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a North American Strongman competition. But I think at that point there was a few. They had novice at least at mine.
Yeah, they
so
were
it was
just starting to come out with that. Even my first couple of years, novice wasn't a thing.
Oh yeah, and I got yelled at by my buddy. He's like, because there was always those weird rules. Like people would say you either won novice competition and then you're never allowed to do it, or it was if you win or place in the top 3, then you're never allowed to do it again. Everybody had like their own little kind of rules, a way of like trying to push people into the upper division and keep them competing. And I won the first one, and then I was like, I just kept going from there. But luckily it was not the 231. There was no one like 231, because that would have been crazy. Yeah. That's awesome, Dad. I know Dave Lawson's been around for a while. I don't know if he's still at Tennessee. Like he's either like around ETSU, VMI, somewhere around that area. But I'm pretty sure he's still coaching. So he's I've heard stories of him too, and him being around wrestlers does not surprise me at all.
Well, he kind of came in, and we had another guy because how Eastern was kind of broken up. We had a field house that was like the Olympic sports kind of were, they trained there, and then it was football, the rowers, volleyball, basketball was out they had a separate facility out by the football field that they trained at, and he was out there. And then he sat down with our coach and said, yep, I'm taking the wrestlers, so they're going to start coming out here. Like, oh, okay. But I said it was a love-hate relationship, and I'm thankful for what he did when we were there.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, it's a good thing you kind of avoided maybe that sickness, kind of avoiding bodybuilding and then having to be stuck in that never-ending loop of always having to cut weight for wrestling. I know that's one thing. I've had wrestling at other schools, and that's the one thing that guys are like, I never again. Like I never want to worry about my weight. And you do in a sense for like strongman and powerlifting, but it seems to be like more of a degree when you get to like a physique when you're doing any sort of bodybuilding stuff. Strongman is you're gonna win your win, whatever you look like. If you look like
Yeah.
a boulder, if you look like a blob when you go out, that it doesn't matter. Like you just want to win at the end of the day. So that might have been the good choice to kind of keep you out of the scale forever.
And it was weird, like that bodybuilding style training. I love that training. Like it's easy on your body for the most part compared to strongman training. But it's just that diet, and it's killing you. So I couldn't do it.
Definitely. Hey, but I know you've done powerlifting too for a couple, like you did it for like 8 years between the strongman stuff. I know that
I've
that's
done like 3-4 meets. That was it.
okay.
Nothing on it. I had a couple state records there for a while. I don't know if they're still around. I don't. Who knows? But it was just something to do, and then I realized how boring it was. And so just hey, that's some people's thing. I get it. That squat, bench, and deadlift. I mean, I still enjoy those lifts, but those powerlifting meets are rough. Like they, at least with strongman, there's things going on. Everybody's cheering everybody, and powerlifting is just a different crowd. Everybody's kind of in their own little world, doing their own thing. So yeah, that's the difference too. I enjoy it, but I don't. I mean, the meets are boring.
Yeah, it's always been hard for me to wrap my head around it too. Even in a sense, sometimes Olympic lifting, just because you do it so many times in your training, and I like it during training, but for me, it's always all right. Well, how is this going to translate over when I go to a competition and I have a stone, or I have to like do a Viking press, whatever it is. Like those are always kind of a means to an end versus okay, well, how do I take this competition squat and then replicate it and do another competition squat? It's always to your point too. Like I've always found it boring. The guys that do it, that's impressive. It's awesome to watch and everything too. But for me to be a part of it, it's not my cup of tea.
Oh yeah, and there's some strong dudes out there that can do it, and hats off to them. And there's some impressive women that do it too. It's just, I mean, I don't every once in a while I don't mind doing it, or if I got a client that wants to do it, I'll go watch. But to make it a regular thing, not for me.
No, definitely. But the interesting thing for you too is you've pretty much done individual sports the whole time. Like there's team aspects to everything, but like outside of you playing football, you went right into wrestling, which is a very individual sport. Obviously, you have training partners, and you're scored on a team setting. But strongman, powerlifting, you're the only person on the stage. When you wrestle, you're the only guy on the mat. Like, have you seen like a big benefit from doing some of these individual sports versus like some people that are only doing team sports and then they get out of it and they don't have that team atmosphere anywhere? Or have you found ways to kind of replicate the team atmosphere as you've done strongman, powerlifting, strength sports?
I think there's what do I say? I definitely think that an individual sport kind of teaches you a little bit about yourself. It forces you, like you said, you're on a wrestling mat. It's you and one other guy. If you make a mistake, everybody can see what mistake you made. It's different if you're on a football field or on the soccer field or something else, and you make it. Well, it was that guy's job to do that, or I did what I was supposed to do. That guy didn't do his job. But out there in an individual sport, it is you, and that's it. But I think there are some team aspects to it. Like as a wrestling coach, I mean, we're still a team. That wrestling is a grind. I mean, that sport is a grind from we start in October and we end in February. We're practicing over Thanksgiving break, we're practicing over Christmas break, and it's just a grind. And so they got to count on each other to lean on. And that's what I think our kids do that I've kind of built up where I'm at. They've done a good job of just kind of being teammates to each other, being friends and hanging out. Because if you don't have that, I mean, it's a long season. I mean, I had some of my best friends I have from college wrestling, and it's just understanding what you're going through with cutting weight, going to class, and then just the 3-hour practices, and then getting the drill in before noon. And it's just so there's some team aspect in that. Yeah, there's some team score and all that too, but I think just the camaraderie, and that's what I like about strongman too, is you have that camaraderie. Whether it's your training partners, everybody's cheering everybody on for the most part. You have a few jerks here and there, but everybody's cheering everybody. Everybody wants everybody to succeed. That's what, and then as I host these comps too, and I see this, it's awesome to watch. The women's classes are ridiculous with that. Like they're all there supportive. As I'm stepping into the masters classes, they're like that too. They're everybody supportive and cheering on. And that's what really has drawn me to Strongman more, is just the community aspect of it. Yes, you're doing it by yourself, but everyone's cheering you on. Everyone wants to see you succeed. So I think there's a little bit of both in both.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, you're right too. I see that in strongman, like, and I compete in Highland Games too. So the masters class and the women's class, they're like some of the most tight knit group too. Like some of them like are wearing the same, like Highland Games are all wearing the same socks or wearing the same kilts. Like you go to strongman competitions, all the master guys, they're usually like in the same area. They do the same competition every year. They've been doing it for like 15 years. And those guys train together. They hype each other up, and it's pretty awesome. And then they start getting like their kids involved too.
Yep.
It's such a tight knit community, and it's awesome to kind of see them all come together. And even though it's individual, like there's placing, there's scoring at the end of it, like they're still helping guys get the deadlift suits, chalking people up, sharing gear. It's such a cool atmosphere for it to be still like a winner and loser at the end of the day.
Yeah. And again, it's a hobby. It really is a hobby. And if you don't treat it like, I mean, of course you got those big guys that's kind of their job, but for the most part, for 90% of us, it's a hobby. So if you're putting too much pressure, and I put a lot of pressure on myself when a few years ago, and then, it's just, you got to go back to why you do it to have fun. And that's why it's doing it to have fun. And that's just been the biggest pressure releaser, I guess. Just have fun and do what you can do. And then with everybody around you, it makes it that much better.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, most people are doing it for a hobby. Like we're paying for entry, we're paying to go travel to these places and everything. If you're like working yourself up to the point where like you just hate it and like you're mad you're not winning, like you're the one that's putting all this time and effort into something that's supposed to be enjoyable. Like you can be upset that you don't win or you don't do well, but not to the point where you're like, fuck this and throwing everything out. Like you're right. It's supposed to be fun at the end of the day.
Yeah. And then, as I said, you're always going to have somebody that's going to take it ridiculously seriously, and that's fine.
Definitely. So with kind of your coaching, working with these high school wrestlers, how, and like I'm sure like some of your clientele are about the same age too. What are your kind of like points of emphasis you have with them? Because again, you're talking about how important it is for them to like work on themselves individually, get better, get stronger, work on their technique. But at the same time, you still want their team atmosphere. Like, how do you kind of draw the line between like a kid being like super competitive and like almost destructive towards a team environment, but at the same time, like letting them develop themselves? Because I'm sure you have kids on the team that are potentially going to go wrestle in college, and then you have some others that are kind of just feeling out the sport.
Oh, we definitely have the whole spectrum. And I've had both, and it has taken me a few years to kind of clean that out. Because I'll tell you, my first year when I took over here, the senior group was they were awful. It was just a bad senior group. And I actually told my assistant coach, I was like, if year 2 is not any better than year 1, there's not going to be a year 3. They were just a rough group, not very coachable. They wanted to do kind of their own thing, and some hotheads, and we had some issues there. But one of the best things that kind of I did was, and I stood by my rules. That was the best thing that these kids realized. Oh, coach isn't playing. Like I told kids, like they had some grade issues. I was like, you got to get your grades up. You're not going into our sectional meet, which is our qualifier for our state meet. And I was like, I'm not taking you. And I gave them plenty of notice. I told administration, I told the athletic department, I was like, this is what I'm doing. I had support. And then a couple kids didn't get it done. And so there was 3 seniors that didn't go my first year. And boy, were they mad. But I gave them an opportunity. And then I think everybody else realized that, oh, hey, coach isn't playing when he talks about his rules. And so that's just taken some time to build our culture. And we're still building it this year. Like last year, I graduated 8 seniors that were all state qualifiers. So that makes it a little that gives us some holes. But I got some awesome young kids coming up, and they kind of understand what we're doing. My last year's seniors were awesome. Like they've been with me ever since I got there, so they kind of knew what I expected. And it's just building those expectations with those young kids. And I think this year we've gotten the best year. So down in Alabama, we're fortunate enough to have a wrestling block class. So there's an athletic class that they have. And so that's our time to lift and condition and that kind of stuff. And these kids have done a great job. They've bought in. They're working hard. Whatever I throw at them, and we try to make it as competitive and stuff that we have. So we don't want to lose that competitive asset. And then you're going to have some kids that are they might get in a fight one day, and that's okay as long as it's not every day. I don't mind that competitive fire and that we're trying to get better. But we don't want to, like you said, we got to find that line so it's not destructive and all that. But that's just you sit the kids down and say, hey, I understand what you're doing, but we're teammates. We're not trying to hurt anybody. Let's save that intensity for when we actually get out in the match and it matters. So it's just building that culture and taking time. Even my clients, they've been with me long enough. They kind of understand kind of how I am and what I expect of them and how we do things. Especially I've got a lot of master athletes that I train. And so it's kind of a less is more. Like we're down the back and we're trying to keep you healthy. Like again, going back into this is a hobby. This is fun. If you can't do it because you're all beat up and hurt, that doesn't help anybody. And then that hurts you and it hurts me, and nobody wants to be that guy. So yeah, it's just managing expectations, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. That's interesting. I do want to touch on like you working with some of the masters athletes too, because like you said, less is more. And I think a lot of, especially like people in my realm, like college sector, like where you're getting kids that are like piss and vinegar, they're like 18 to 21, 22, and all they want to do is go, go, go. And most of those kids can still play a full game after going out and getting drunk the night before and like terrorizing their bodies and still be able to kind of put through. You can't do that when you're 45. So like having clients, like paying clients that come back to you and you have them feeling good before they leave sessions, not just beating them to a pulp and them never wanting to come back. You're trying to look for a longevity at that point. But most people, when you're getting high school kids at the very tail end, or you're getting college kids, like you feel like you can beat them up because their life expectancy is forever because they just heal. But I wanted to touch on what you were talking about first, like with those high school kids and like the expectations and the culture. I'm sure it got a little bit easier as like now you have those kids coming in the first year, or now like first year kids that have sophomores, juniors, and seniors kind of teaching them. Do you kind of let some of those high school kids like almost echo the culture and like kind of give them rein to do a little bit more and teach the younger kids? Like just because I'm interested at the high school level, or is it still kind of you leading most of it? And like those kids understanding that you're kind of an authoritative figure and you're going to be the teacher versus like some of the high school kids where they might not listen to as much?
We get a little bit of both, I think. Again, with each year, I kind of got to set the tone and set the pace so they understand my expectations. But my kids that have been with me, like they're going to help with these younger kids. They're going to help with technique stuff with these guys. They understand what I want. They understand what we're looking for, and they're there to help too. Because I mean, I've got two eyes. That's it. And if I've got 40, 50 kids in there, I've got one assistant coach and one volunteer coach. And so my assistant coach, she kind of deals with a lot of the women that we have. So just trying to go around and hit all these kids, you just can't do it. So I do rely on these older kids, these kids that have been with me and understand what we're doing to kind of help with that aspect. And even just simple things with our warm-ups. Like matter of fact, today we were doing our conditioning stuff, and our older guys just kind of said, hey, guys, stop, get in our lines, do what we're supposed to do. And that's all them. Like I sat back and just I told them what they're doing. Hey, we're doing our warm up and then our regular structured warm up. And they kind of went off on that. So it's good. It's fun to see. And the kids that want to take it serious, you see the kids that want to take it serious and want it to mean something. they're going to step up and do it. And I let that happen. But it's at the same time, I need to set the structure and so they understand what I need. But like when it's time to like they'll clap each other up and that kind of stuff. So I do lean on my older kids to help me. And they do a great job.
No, that's awesome. It's wrestling is such a different beast. Like working with them at the college level and kind of seeing those guys work and just the intensity that happens at practice, it's unreal. And if you have like no structure built in with those guys, you're in super big trouble because those guys will beat each other up. Like you're wrestling with someone in your weight class a lot of times. And in college, there's only 10 guys going, one at each weight. So whoever your partner you're drilling with is not wrestling that weekend. Like he's not going to that match. So if you have guys with a bad attitude that are like head hunting, they're looking to injure someone, like that's a problem because like if you don't have that structure in place, then it's just going to be a free for all with everybody trying to beat each other up. So like that's awesome that you set the tone and then you hold them to it because then the kids, like you said, they understand that like there's no wiggle room with it. It's black or gray. Like, did you achieve this? Do you not? You're not wrestling.
Yeah. And that's one thing I like about wrestling too, is especially when I tell my parents at the parent meeting, it's like, this is real easy. I don't play favorites. If you win the wrestle off, you're wrestling. And so I don't have to worry about, you want to argue with playing time. You don't have to, because they win the wrestle off and they're wrestling. And then it's as simple as that. So I don't have to get into all that, which makes it nice too.
That's awesome. Hey, so what kind of gravitated you towards wrestling, like coaching again? Because I know, like you said, you've been a gym owner. You work with clients both in strongman and like general population, I'm sure as well too. So what kind of gravitated you to that? And then how do you kind of balance between teaching, strength coaching, and wrestling?
The second one I'm still trying to figure out, but really kind of how I got back into it is one of my clients and their kind of whole family came in and they trained and all that, and he was just like, hey, they're wrestling over here, and I kind of watched one of his stepkid kind of I kind of looked at his film and I said, hey, we can do this, and they had a little 10 by 10 mat that they brought in. And so we did a couple things just on the side, just kind of, I was like, hey, here's a couple things you can do to kind of get better. He ended up taking fourth in the state and all that. And they're like, you need to apply for this job. I was like, well, it doesn't hurt to have a conversation. So the mother actually gave my resume to the principal. And I just kind of called up there and inquired about it. I was like, I'll go in and talk to him. But as I was talking to him, the only way it made sense to be a head coach is you need to be in the building. That's the only way it makes sense to pull kids and make sure kids are doing what they need to do. I mean, there are head coaches that are not teachers, but you just can't build a program like that. And I knew this was going to be a build, and it was going to be kind of start from the ground up, because wrestling down here in Alabama in the south part of Alabama is relatively new. I think this will be my sixth season here. And the school I'm at and two other schools in the county were kind of the pilot schools for wrestling to start down there. So they may have been 9 years. I mean, we're under 10 years of wrestling being down here in the South, this far south. Kind of stopped at like Birmingham, middle of the state area, Montgomery. So we knew it was going to be a build and kind of getting into it. So that's kind of how I got back into it. They were just like, hey, you need to apply for this job. I was like, okay. And then so I did, and I got it.
No, that's awesome, because like it's refreshing to see. I wish I would have been able to do wrestling when I was growing up. In the last like couple of years, I've dabbled in jiu-jitsu a little bit. It's been kind of sparse lately. And it's just, it's hard to pick up wrestling or find anywhere you can do wrestling like when you're in your 30s anymore. So like jiu-jitsu is kind of the only thing you can do to kind of get on the mat. But with all the colleges like that end up closing, like I was at Fresno State when they cut wrestling during COVID, and other schools were kind of following suit. And there's always been programs like one of our coaches at Boise, they cut the program. Stanford at one point did too. Like it seems like it's condensing some of those Olympic sports more and more, and it's harder for kids to even get into a college setting. It's nice to see that on the high school realm, it's still broadening out. You just hope there's more opportunities for them to continue to compete after they're done with high school. But for it to get down to South Alabama, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and as I said, it's growing, and you're starting to see there's a couple colleges here in Alabama that are starting to hold teams. We got another one that just started up. This is their first season to have it, so it's starting to come around. But again, you're looking at, especially down south, you're looking at D2, D3, NAIA, and JUCOs. That's what you're looking at down here. You don't really have any big D1s. I mean, like Virginia Tech is going to be like your probably biggest D1 down here. I mean, don't quote me on that if I'm wrong, but
Yeah, what
they're
Arkansas,
just
like
not big
Little
because the
Rock?
SEC doesn't have it. So like they're not
Yeah,
going to have the Southern Conference has them. But it's still not down here. It's still, this is a football area, and it's going to be a football area. That football is king, and whatever they want to do, they're going to get priority over everyone else.
yeah, you're right. I think like probably the closest to you is like maybe Little Rock, which is a fairly new program. It's only like 4 or 5 years old, Division 1, like Missouri, like you said, Virginia Tech, some of those Midwest schools, but it doesn't get too far south. There's a few AC schools that have it, but it's rough. But hey, you touched on something too, like when you got to the program and you said like, hey, I need to be a teacher, I need to be in house in order to kind of build this program the right way, like showing face with the kids in the hallways, I'm sure, maybe some of them being in your classes in order to really build the culture and have a program where you're invested in the school. How do you think like your own training and like your background in wrestling and competing in strength sports and everything has kind of influenced your coaching and maybe built some buy-in and credibility with those kids, or do they even know that you kind of compete in these sports or have?
They do. They always get a kick when they see like Instagram posts or things that I do. They're like, oh, like matter of fact, like it's like I was doing the truck pull the other day. Like, you just pulled a truck. I was like, yeah. Like to me, it's not a big deal, but these kids think it's awesome, and everything. So anytime I do a con, they always ask me how I did. They want to see videos and that kind of stuff, which is kind of cool. It has definitely helped, especially as far as wrestling. Like I'm a pretty built dude, and so it has some credibility where I'm not just some fat, overweight guy that just, hey, they said, hey, you're coaching wrestling, and kind of take in there, and the kids understand that I wrestled in college, and I've done this a while, and so they kind of know I know what I'm talking about. That's what I tell the kids. I was like, some of these kids, man, I was like, I've forgotten more wrestling than you know, so just hear me out. Let's just assume I know what I'm talking about. But it doesn't stop me from like I still look at listen to other coaches, and I'm still learning. We get new situations. I see something. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't think about that. So I'm not closed minded about what we do. Like if something works and there's something better than what I'm showing, I'm all for it. And you know, I've gotten a lot better, and being in the NSCA has really taught me to just, hey, let's go ahead and look at other options. Like it's not all one way. There's other things, and see if it works and see if it makes sense for you. Because there's more, like the strength game, there's more one way to do things. And just kind of find out what works with you, what works with your personality, what makes sense to you, and kind of in your philosophy and all that. But as I said, I'm still learning. I'm always picking up things, and you never know. Strongman wise, I pick up something every competition I go to, and so that has helped me. And the kids know that I'm working, and I think it's important for a coach to have goals. And I can't ask the kids to do something if I'm not going to do it too. Shoot, I wrestled in a tournament this summer. I've been wrestling in 20 years. I did an open tournament just because I had a couple kids that said they were going to go to it. Of course, they didn't go to it, but still, I still did it. Ended up getting hurt, but it's like, yeah, that was the one and only time. But I did it. Like I was like, hey, I'll go wrestle. And so I'm not afraid to jump in that kind of stuff. And the kids are like, oh, wow, I want to see the video. Let me see the video. So it's helped me just to kind of stay focused and show that I have goals, and I'm still setting to do things. And I think the kids respect that.
No, that's great. Like it's a great way to like sharpen the sword and try something new. And I think as a coach, you always have to do that because if you're the guy that's like, this is how I've always done it. Oh, this worked for me. That doesn't mean it's going to work for every single kid that comes through your door. And like you said, you've got 50 kids on your mat. You've got both men, like you have male and female, like you've got boys and girls wrestlers there, three coaches like sparsed out over that and different training ages. Like the difference between a freshman in high school and a senior can be light years.
Oh, you're telling me. I teach mostly freshmen, so yeah, I know.
So no, for you to go out and also like to have been involved in so many different sports and to have your wrestling background and compete in strongman and compete in powerlifting and then do all these other things on the side, like all those different things, and then still stay competitive and go out and challenge yourself in different weight classes and different divisions. Like that stuff is all fuel for the fire that comes back. And I'm sure like just charges your coaching up and probably fuels you up to like go in and pour back into them. Like, is it fair to kind of say that like all that stuff in your own training is just easily given back into what you do with the players?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it just goes down to putting in hard work, trying to achieve a goal, and that's kind of what we've set out to do with wrestling. What I set out to do for strongman and stuff. It's just put in the hard work. It's not going to be easy, and that's okay. We're going to have to work for it. Nobody's going to give you anything.
Yeah. So what going through kind of like the inception after when you were in college and then got out of wrestling and then started pursuing strength sports, how has your kind of preparation and training and programming kind of changed? Because you did a few powerlifting meets, but you're doing a lot of barbell stuff anyway, all the strongman stuff, and you're still on the mat. So you still have to be able to move, demo all these moves, probably like maybe some of the heavyweight high school kids get in there and grapple with them a little bit too. So how does your kind of programming fit into that to like ultimately culminate to like what you're doing in your current training?
I will say strongman training is awesome for wrestling. I'm just I'm just gonna say that outside, because when I competed over the summer, like my strength was not an issue. I felt I could move well. Now my cardio, on the other hand, was awful. And so I didn't know what to expect. I was like, I'll be all right. And I'm like, the second match was like 20 minutes after my first, so I'm sitting there in the side going, oh my god, it's like this is awful. I forgot how long 4 minutes was. Um, but but yeah, it has changed kind of how it has helped me, that strongman training, kind of because you got to move, you got to be strong, and all that, and that really helps me. And I got to be able to show the kids what we're doing. I got to be able to get in that position. I don't do it so much anymore, but when I first started, I had a pretty big heavyweight, pretty strong kid that he needed to be pushed, and I was the only one who was going to get a chance to push. And so I'm not afraid to step in with those kids a little bit, and so you got to be able to do that. I know my limits too. I'm 41 now, so these kids are high school kids. So I do know my limits, but just my training, it's just helped me build that base, and it's helped me be able to roll with these kids without too much issue.
I like it. Hey, so I guess in your own training, when you're outside of like working at like in the classroom or like on the mats with all the kids, is most of your training kind of solo in the garage, or are you getting with like a strongman group on some days?
It's for the most part, it's me in my garage. I've switched over to kind of 3 days a week. I work with Mike Westerling as my coach. I've been with him for a few years, and he kind of switched me over to a 3 day block as opposed to 4 or 5. And when he first said it, I was like, "It's only 3 days. Can I do some extra?" He goes, "Just trust me." I was like, "Okay," and I love it now. Like it's like I feel recovered. I feel not beat up. I still like just do some walk and some movement stuff on some of those other days, but it's just that 3 days. It makes a difference, especially as I get older. I can kind of recover a little bit better. But yeah, and then usually on Saturdays, like even though I close my gym, one of my clients, she has a boot camp kind of garage gym, and so all my equipment is over there. And so we still do a strongman Saturday with a group. Sometimes it's just me, sometimes there's 10 of us. It just depends who's around that week, what guys are training for, and we try to stay together as best as possible, because that's fun. I mean, it's just fun to get together and do event stuff together. Every once in a while I'll drive over. We got a good group over in Mobile. Some of my best friends over there. So we'll go over there and train every once in a while. And sometimes they'll come over here. So it just kind of really just depends what everyone's got going on. But during the week, it's by myself. But during the weekend, we try to get together.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I'm always interested in it too because ever since I got out of grad school, I've always been pretty much for like 11 years, I've been training by myself now. So looking for crews and like trying to replicate that environment somehow in the garage by myself, or like I said, trying to find a place to at least get that every other weekend or just one day a week. I mean, that's huge. Like you said, like the camaraderie and being competitive and just like having fun and like not having to change all your weights and stuff too. Like, I mean, training alone has its benefits for sure, but it's nice to break the monotony and break the routine a little bit and go out and share some misery with everybody on a Saturday.
Yeah, and just sometimes it helps you just to have somebody kind of look at your lifts, say, "Hey, here's an issue I'm having. What do you see?" When I first started, when we moved down here. I didn't have a garage or anything, and we were actually had all my stuff in a storage unit that was like in the corner of this building. So I actually had to put it all in a cart, roll it all out into the parking lot, train, and then put it all back on the cart and roll it all back in. It took me longer to pull the equipment out and put it back in than it actually did to train. Like that was miserable, and I was all by myself.
Oh, I know that feeling. The last one I had, the storage unit in California, it was storage units facing like one faces a hallway, like a little walkway, one faces the road. And I luckily got one of the back ones where there was like a turnaround spot, but mine was the one that faced the hallway. So you got to invest in dollies as much as possible. Just buy industrial dollies that are steel, like reinforced, and then just start putting your plates on that and then push them low. And
Yeah, luckily
that's
the
that
storage unit
saved me.
had some carts that we could use. So I would put
Ooh,
my stall mats on top and then load everything on top of that, and just there we go.
that's perfect. Hey, so for team sports and everything, obviously, like we talk individual sports like wrestling, there's still team aspects for it. But what do you think is like one of like the key things that you get from like the individual sports, like the main three that you competed in, wrestling, powerlifting, strongman? Like, what do you think out of those three that are probably similar is a big takeaway that a team sport athlete that hasn't competed in any of those sports could really benefit from adding into their preparation, or like maybe even character traits and stuff that are instilled from those individual sports that would really kind of propel a team in that environment?
I think off the top of my head, just individual accountability. Like you can team, I mean, you're always going to have somebody that's going to cheat it. You're always going to have somebody that's going to come up short on their sprints. It's just that individual accountability. You're the only one out there. So if you make a mistake, everyone's going to watch you. And so it forces you you're either going to be on or you're going to be off. So I think the biggest one that they're missing is just that individual accountability. And I mean, they can be, and I get with team sports, sometimes you're overshined by sometimes the stars and the big players and that kind of stuff. But as I said, with an individual sport, you're out there on your own. So you're going to have to figure it out. You don't have anybody to lean on. So that would be off the top of my head what I would say.
No, I definitely would agree with that too. I guess with your own training, like you spoke about, you have a coach that's kind of programming for you right now. So like you do have some accountability that is not just like self-driven from yourself. Like I'm sure you're giving feedback and everything to the coaches. How is that? Like you've been a coach for a long time, you've been competing in sports like ever since before high school. Like how important is it for you to have a coach that kind of programs for you, even though you could definitely do it for yourself? And then how do you kind of provide feedback, and how do you kind of go back and forth with your coach to make sure that that program is still kind of the most ideal thing for you when you're working remotely with them?
For me, it's one less thing I have to deal with. So if I have somebody else program it, as I said, Mike's been in the game for strongman for a long time. So he knows what he's doing, and it's easier for me to just, all right, pull my workout out, go out, do what I need to do. And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to program it. I think sometimes when you program for yourself, sometimes you don't always program the things that maybe you need to do that you don't necessarily like to do. There'll be times I'll look at a program and I'll look at it and be like, why am I doing this? Or that sucks. But I'll do it. And it's just I won't program that myself sometimes. And he could just say, here, this is what the comp we got coming up. This is what we're working on. This is what we need to do. And it was actually funny. The first time I worked with him, like I got the program from him, and then he kind of messaged me. It was getting ready for nationals, and he messaged me, he goes, hey, I haven't heard from you. Is everything going okay? Are you ready to go? I was like, yeah, I've never really had a coach before. And so I was just like, yeah, I just assumed if there was no issues, I didn't need to tell you anything. He goes, well, you can communicate. Don't worry about it. I was like, oh, okay. And then after that, we were fine. We go back and forth all the time. And then he just kind of lets me, if something's going on, I'll message him and say, hey, I tweaked this or this happened. He goes, all right, let me rewrite it. And he'll send it back to me. Usually within that day. He's pretty impressive how he does that. Or we're getting ready to change the block, and he'll be like, give me some feedback. What's not going well? What do we need to work on? Or if a comp comes up halfway through, he's just like, let me know and we'll rewrite it. So he's pretty flexible and to give me what I need with that aspect. But I mean, if I don't do it, is he going to say anything? No. But it's at least for me, it's that accountability. Well, this was written. This is what needs to be done. It's very rare that there's something that I don't do. Or matter of fact, the other day I didn't do something just because I thought I was going to die after doing truck pulls. So we had to cut that one a little short, but that was just for my own sanity reasons. But no, so that's it. We've had a pretty good communication. As I said, I've been with him for a while, and so I appreciate what he does.
No, that's great. It's nice to have someone else in there, like you said, to take a little bit of pressure off too, and be one less thing you have to worry about. But it's I don't know what it is, but when someone else writes it, like you feel like you owe it to them just as much as yourself to do it. And when you do it yourself, like you said, you're going to put in your own things, biases are going to come into play, and you're going to do the things you want to do, maybe more so than the things you need to do. It's like, I compare it to like, if you go, people make fun of me for like going to get like a nice deli sandwich. It's like, I don't know what it is, but like someone that if you make the exact same sandwich as me, but someone else makes it, I don't know what it is. It just tastes better. So I feel like the same thing with the coaching. Like even if someone writes the exact same program for me, I don't know what that drive is to like do it for them as well and then get the feedback. It seems like that's part of the team atmosphere that kind of gets involved a little bit more when you have a coach or even just someone providing it for you.
I think too that like you're paying for it, so you're going to be more invested in it.
True.
Same thing when I have personal training clients and stuff like that. You're paying for it, so you're going to be more invested. And if it doesn't work, then you're out that money. So you want to make sure you're getting what you pay for, and so you're going to be more invested in what you're doing if you're paying somebody else to do it. For you, like you're not paying yourself to do it, so you're just going to put it out. And I'm like, well, I didn't get to that this week. Oh well. So this way, you're like, no, I'm paying for it. I'm gonna get my money's worth out of it.
Definitely, yeah, that's definitely a good point too. Hey, I wanted to touch on this too before we kind of get close to wrapping all this up. You've newly taken over one of our previous podcast guests before Heidi Campo was on the show. You are now the NSCA Strongman SIG president. So
I'm the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, for people that might not understand like some of the SIGs and everything, can you give like a brief synopsis of what the Strongman SIG entails and like maybe kind of what the mission looks like going forward, like under your leadership?
Yeah, I'm excited, and I appreciate everything Heidi did to move this forward, to get it going, get it started. And so I'm excited to kind of take over. We got a good group with yourself, like Rick Howard, Garrett, all these guys that are really want to do something. But essentially, it's with the National Strength and Conditioning Association. It's a special interest group, and they've got all different kinds. But our kind of focus is to kind of bridge that gap between the researchers and the practical aspect of it. And strongman's a little tricky because there's not a ton of research out there. But at the last national conference. I think we got some people that might be interested in doing something and kind of backing and stuff. So we got a lot of exciting things going on. I think we're going to try to get some stuff going with the NSCA TV. Podcasting we're trying to do. So if people want to get involved or see what we're doing, get on the NSCA Strongman SIG Facebook page. We got some things coming off. Heidi's done kind of a live call, Facebook call for the last couple of weeks. I was on it last week or Friday. It was, but there wasn't a lot of people on it. But again, it was just kind of a weird time. It was Friday evening. But we're trying to do things like that. We're looking at maybe doing like a Facebook Live expert panel and things like that to get people to ask questions and kind of stuff. So we're trying to get some more engagement on the Facebook page, just kind of see what we're doing. And I'm really kind of excited. I think we got some good ideas. We'd like to work a little bit more with some, maybe like the bodybuilding SIG and the powerlifting SIG, since our trainings and nutrition stuff, they're there. And I'd like to work together with those guys as well. And just to kind of, again, that whole idea, like what Heidi started, just to get strongman out there and see what we're doing. And there's a lot of like college coaches that are using stuff in their programs. And I know people see this stuff and maybe they want to use it too. So and just kind of be that guide out there to get people that want to do strongman or want to put strongman implements into their training. How can they do that? And what's a good way to incorporate these things, because equipment availability is an issue. And so we're trying to address that as well. So that's kind of what our focus is and kind of what we're doing. But again, we are with the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and that's kind of, we're trying to bridge that gap between the practical and the research people.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's been great to be a part of it. It was cool that Heidi kind of launched it, and it's awesome to see you kind of take it over. And I'm excited to see where it goes. And hopefully you just keep growing it from there. Like you said, it's an interesting one when you start looking at some of the other SIGs. Like the other ones are kind of cut and dry. I was like, oh, soccer, lacrosse, like hockey. Like it's different because those have been around for so long. Strongman has always been super interesting with just its history and heritage, that to get someone that's going to do research on an Atlas stone is very unique. So it'll be a challenge, but it'll be a fun one, I'm sure, for everybody that comes on board and is willing to help with
and
that
there's stuff
research
out there, but a lot of the stuff is done overseas. It's nothing done here locally. But I think we've got some kind of feelers out. I think we got some people to try to get some of these pros involved and that kind of stuff. So there's some good things, good ideas out there. And I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see some stuff happening.
Awesome. Nice. Well, hey, Chris, like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and some good old fashioned overtime for your cardio for wrestling, the next open comp you got going on. Maybe a few years down the line, but you could take your time with any of these, or you could go rapid fire. You ready though?
All right, I'll do my best.
All right, first one I got for you: biggest influence in coaching, and you can go any realm, like wrestling, strength conditioning, teaching, and then favorite strength sport athlete.
Ooh, strength sport athlete. I'm going to have to go with Zydrunas Savickas. I think he's kind of done it all, and he's been there. And he's impressive for what he's done, and in powerlifting, in strongman and everything. And he's always been fun to watch. And so he would be mine. As far as what'd you say, biggest coach's influence?
Yeah.
I'm almost gonna say my brother. My brother's kind of one that got me into teaching, and kind of, he was football coach, he was wrestling coach and everything. So my brother has kind of been my biggest coaching influence.
Oh, that's awesome. You guys got a little bit of everything in that family then. Okay. Hey, so when you're not coaching, you're not teaching, you're not on the mats, or you're not like in the garage training, what are some of your outside hobbies that don't involve the barbell?
Well, I mean, you kind of taken up a lot of my time with all those other ones. So there's not a whole lot. As I said, I live just a few miles from the beach, so I enjoy going down to the beach. Just a lot of times I'll go down there and walk and just kind of get some just kind of get some fresh air and stuff, just spending time with family and my son and my wife and all that. So that's kind of what we do in our free time. We don't have a lot of free time.
Yeah, I know. Hey, so if you weren't doing what you're doing right now, teaching, coaching, what do you think you would be doing as a career? And if you could go back and do a different strength sport and it's not strongman, what sport would you pick?
Ooh, as far as if I could do something, I don't know. So I've taught ever since I got out of college, so I'm not sure. I don't know. I always want to be an archaeologist when I was younger, so I'll go with that. But other strength sport that I would do other than strongman, I would say probably Olympic lifting, or even I would say Highlands, but I've tried that a couple of times, and the spinning and all that stuff. I can't do that. So I would say Olympic lifting.
All right. Hey, so if you're setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what is playing like through the speakers, and what is your best post-training meal?
Ooh, I've kind of switched. I used to be kind of real like heavy metal kind of stuff, and then it just really kind of what mood I'm in. Sometimes and a lot of it's just that EDM or hip hop and kind of stuff, but just something that's got that constant beat is usually what I like nowadays. And then favorite, I mean, I eat pretty much the same thing every day, so I'm all about steak and potatoes. You can't go wrong with steak and potatoes.
All right. Hey, last one I got for you. If you were going to sum up teaching and coaching into one word or one phrase, what do those mean to you?
One word is challenging, because every day it's something different, because you got, like you said, we've got so many kids, everybody learns different. Everybody is going to be a little different athletically. And so you just kind of got to do your best to kind of figure out how to reach those kids. So challenging would be rewarding, but challenging.
Oh, definitely. You definitely got your hands full with 50 athletes on the mat, all at different ages. You got your own training going on, your own coaching, your clients and everything. Family, you got a pretty busy schedule for yourself, but challenging and rewarding, it's definitely a big thing. So that's awesome, Chris. Well, hey, for anybody that has any follow-up questions for you, we'll link the NSCA's Facebook page and stuff as well for the SIG group. But for you personally, where can they go to kind of follow along your coaching and your lifting journey, or follow up with you for any other questions?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter every once in a while, or X, whatever they call it now. They can email me. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Awesome, man. Hey, well, like I said, thanks again for coming on. It was well worth the wait. So I'm glad we got to make this happen and hear a little bit more about your inception in the strength game.
I appreciate your time and all that. So I appreciate being on here. It was fun.
Awesome, Chris. Well, take care, man.
All right.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.